dreamers, you're listening to inspiring life stories where calm voices meet powerful lessons. Close your eyes, relax your mind, and drift into stories that heal your heart. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll, subscribe, share, and let someone else feel inspired too, because one story can change a life, maybe even yours. The sun sank behind the endless wheat fields, leaving the village bathed in a soft amber glow. The smell of bread from the baker's hut drifted through the air, a smell that made Eli's empty stomach twist. He was just a boy of 10, small and barefoot, his shirt torn and hanging loosely over his thin frame. Dust clung to his hair and the soles of his feet were rough as stone. He had no home, no family, just a wooden box beside the old windmill where he slept every night. The villagers pitied him sometimes, tossed him leftover crumbs, an old apple, a worn-out jacket. But most of the time, they just passed him by, too busy to notice the hungry boy watching the world with quiet eyes. That evening, Eli sat by the road, holding a single coin, the only thing he owned. He stared at it as the sky darkened, wondering whether to buy bread or save it for tomorrow. Hunger won, as it always did. He bought a small loaf, tore it in half, and gave one piece to a stray dog. Sitting near him, the dog's eyes softened, tail wagging weakly. Eli smiled. "We're both hungry, aren't we?" he whispered. He didn't know it then, but that small act of kindness would be the seed of his fortune one day. Night fell. The stars shimmered like promises above the cold village. Eli lay on the ground, his stomach still aching, but his heart strangely warm. He whispered to himself, "One day, I'll have enough food for everyone. One day, I'll never sleep hungry again." The next morning, Eli woke early to find work. He offered to carry water, clean barns, polish shoes, anything for a few coins. The farmers often laughed at his small size, but one kind old man, Mr. Rowan, saw something in the boy's eyes, determination. "You've got the look of someone who doesn't quit, mister," Rowan said. "Come help me in the fields. You'll earn your meal." That day, Eli worked harder than he ever had. His tiny hands bled from pulling weeds and carrying baskets, but when Mr. Rowan handed him a warm bowl of soup, Eli smiled wider than he ever had before. The old man watched him eat and nodded thoughtfully. A good heart and honest work, that's all a man needs. Remember that, boy. Eli did remember. He worked every day that followed, saving every coin he earned. He slept little, ate little, but dreamed big, of a shop where poor children could come and eat for free, of a house with warm lights and no empty bellies. Years passed slowly. He learned to trade, to fix things, to sell. He studied how merchants spoke, how prices changed with the seasons. He listened more than he talked. Every mistake taught him something. Every hunger made him wiser. And though he still wore torn clothes and patched shoes, people began to notice the fire in his eyes. One evening, as he rested by the same road where he had once shared bread with a stray dog, a merchant wagon broke down nearby. The driver cursed under his breath, unable to fix the broken wheel. Eli approached carefully. "Sir, I can help," he said softly. The merchant looked at the boy doubtfully but nodded. Eli worked through the evening, finding a branch, carving a wedge, fixing the axle. When the wagon was ready, the merchant smiled. "You've saved my trade, boy. Take this." He handed Eli a small pouch filled with coins, more than Eli had ever seen. At night, Eli held the pouch tightly under the stars. He didn't spend it. He didn't boast. He only whispered, "This is the beginning." And it was, for the first time. The boy with torn pockets had hope in his hands. First winter wind swept across the village, carrying the scent of frost and wood smoke. Eli, now 12, stood outside the small barn where he worked, watching the golden moons dance across the muddy road. The same old windmill where he once slept creaked in the distance. His jacket was still torn, his hands still rough, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. Inside his pocket, tied with a piece of string, was the pouch the merchant had given him months ago. Sometimes he'd open it just to look at the coins, not to spend, but to remind himself that life could change if he didn't give up. Those coins were his proof that effort mattered. Each morning, Eli worked for Mr. Rowan in the fields, and in the evenings, he cleaned tools at the blacksmith's shop. It wasn't just about earning coins anymore. It was about learning how the world worked. He watched people bargain, trade, repair, build. He studied every detail, quietly taking mental notes. He discovered that knowledge was wealth, invisible but powerful. The decision one freezing night, Eli sat by a dying fire with his old friend, the stray dog's ribs showed through his fur, and Eli tore a piece of his stale bread to share. "I've been saving long enough," Eli whispered, staring into the flames. "It's time I make something of it. No one becomes rich just by saving. I'll start small, maybe selling firewood or apples," but he wagged his tail as if agreeing. The flickering firelight danced on Ellie's determined face. That night, under a moonlit sky, he made a promise to himself. "I will turn this pouch of coins into something greater, not just for me, but for those who are hungry like I was." First business at dawn, Eli walked to the nearby forest with an old axe borrowed from Mr. Rowan. He chopped small bundles of wood. His hands blistered, his shoulders ached, but when he carried his first load into the village, people smiled. "Firewood for sale," he shouted shyly, dry and ready to burn. A kind woman bought the first bundle, then another villager. By sunset, Eli had sold all of them and earned more than he had in a week's labor. He didn't stop there. He cleaned the coins, stacked them neatly, and whispered, "Tomorrow double." Day after day, he worked, cutting, carrying, selling. He learned which woods burned longer, which ones villagers preferred. He noticed that people wanted not just firewood, but dry, easy-to-light bundles during rain. So Eli began to cover his wood with leaves to keep them dry. It was a small detail, but a genius one. Soon, more people came to him. The fall, but success doesn't walk alone. Jealousy follows close behind. Some older boys in the village who saw Eli earning more than they did decided to ruin his trade. One night, while he was asleep near the barn, they sneaked into the woodshed and set his stacks of wood on fire. By morning, nothing remained but ashes. Eli fell to his knees, staring at the smoking ruin. His hard work, his weeks of effort gone. He could barely speak. His pouch of savings was still safe, but his hope flickered weakly when Mr. Rowan heard what happened. He placed a hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Sometimes life burns your wood to teach you how to build a furnace," he said softly. Eli didn't understand then, but he listened. He took a breath, wiped his tears. "I'll start again," he whispered. To restart, Eli spent the next days gathering wood again, this time smarter. He built a hidden storage hut near a stream where no one could find it. He started collecting pine cones and twigs to sell as fire starters, learning that even small things had value if offered right. The villagers admired his perseverance. A few began to buy from him out of respect, not just need. Then one snowy morning, the merchant whose wagon he had once fixed came through the village again. His name was Mr. Alden, a tall man with kind eyes and a warm coat. "Boy," he called, recognizing Eli. "You're still here? Still working?" Eli nodded proudly. "Yes, sir. Selling firewood now." Mr. Alden examined the bundles, smiled, and bought several. "You've done well, son. I remember your honesty. Tell me, would you like to work with me? I travel between villages. I could use a helper." Ellie's heart skipped. It was a chance, a real one. A way out of the same muddy roads and endless hunger. "Yes, sir," he said firmly. "I'd be honored." The journey begins the next week. Eli left the village for the first time. With Buddy following faithfully, he climbed into Mr. Alden's wagon and looked back at the place where he had once slept in the cold. The field stretched behind him, the windmill, the barn, the muddy road where he had once sold wood. Everything seemed both distant and precious. He whispered under his breath, "Goodbye, old life. I'll come back one day, and I'll help them all." The wagon rolled down the dirt path, wheels crunching over frost-dot myrrh. Alden taught him how to bargain with traders, how to calculate profit, how to recognize quality goods. Eli learned fast, faster than anyone expected. He wrote down everything he learned in a small notebook Mr. Alden gave him. Each word, each figure, each mistake became part of his growing wisdom. Months passed. He traveled through towns, markets, and ports. He saw wealth and poverty side by side. Golden houses beside starving children. It reminded him of his own hunger. And every time he saw someone begging, he shouted. Mr. Alden fell ill during a snowstorm. The horses were tired, the wagon stuck in the snow. Eli took charge, guiding the horses, finding shelter, lighting a fire, caring for the old merchant all night. By dawn, Mr. Alden's fever broke. He smiled weakly. "You've got courage, boy. Than most men I've known. When I'm gone, you'll go far. Just promise me something." "What, sir?" Eli asked. "Never forget where you came from. Money means nothing without mercy." Eli nodded slowly, the words etching themselves deep inside him, the spark months later. As spring returned, Mr. Alden took him to a bustling town full of shops, ships, and opportunities. Eli saw things he had never imagined: glass lamps, colorful fabrics, bread that smelled like heaven. Then they stopped at a small cafe. Mr. Alden placed a hand on Ellie's shoulder. "It's time, son. You've learned enough. I'll help you start something of your own." Eli blinked in disbelief. "My own? Yes. I'll lend you enough to open a small stall. Sell what you know, firewood, twigs, maybe even handmade tools. But remember, this is not a gift. It's a chance." Eli nodded, heart pounding. The same pouch he once guarded like treasure was now joined by a new one full of hope. That night, under the city stars, Eli couldn't sleep. He thought of his childhood hunger, the fire that burned his wood, the nights he slept beside the road. And he smiled, because for the first time, the boy with torn pockets wasn't just surviving, he was beginning to build. He whispered to Buddy, who slept beside him, "Tomorrow we start something new. Tomorrow we begin to change our stars." The sun rose over the bustling town of Brookhaven, spreading golden light across its cobblestone streets. Traders shouted, wagons rattled, and the scent of roasted bread mixed with morning dew. It was a world far bigger and faster than Eli's quiet village, but it was also full of chances. Eli stood at the edge of the marketplace, a wooden cart beside him and Buddy at his feet. His heart raced. Today was his first day as a merchant. The same boy who once begged for bread now had his own stall, small, modest, but his. He sold firewood bundles, pinnacones, handmade ropes, and small tools Mr. Alden helped him acquire. He had written a sign on a rough plank: "Honest goods, fair prices, ask for Eli." It wasn't perfect, but it was true. The first sale. For hours, no one came. Bigger merchants with fancy banners and silver coins stole every glance. Ellie's heart sank. Maybe he was too small, too poor, too invisible. But then a woman in a green shawl stopped. She looked at his bundles, lifted one, and smiled faintly. "These are neatly tied," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Dried for 3 days under sun, they burn longer," Eli replied nervously. She nodded. "I'll take 3. Ellie's hand shook as he counted the coins. He tried to smile without crying. "Thank you, ma'am. You won't regret it." That single sale sparked something inside him. It wasn't the money, it was proof that effort could be seen. That afternoon, more customers came, some because of curiosity, some because they liked his polite honesty. By sunset, his cart was half empty and his heart completely full. The lesson of fairness: every evening, Eli counted his coins and set aside a portion. One part for supplies, one part for savings, and one small part for giving: a loaf of bread, a warm meal, a helping hand. Alden often said, "The world runs on trade, but hearts run on kindness." Eli understood that deeply. Soon, townspeople began to notice his sincerity. A blacksmith offered him better deals. A farmer trusted him to sell his apples. Within months, Ellie's small stall became a busy corner of honest trade. But the more successful he became, the more challenges followed. The betrayal of few other merchants in the market didn't like Ellie's growing popularity. He was too honest, and honesty to them was bad for business. One evening, as Eli returned from delivering wood, he found his stall smashed, the sign broken, his coins gone. His supplies scattered, trampled into mud. He fell to his knees, speechless, his whole dream destroyed again. Buddy barked and whined beside him, trying to nudge him to move. But Eli just sat there, numb. People walked past, whispering. Some pitied him, some smirked. Only one man stopped, Murdoch Alden. He placed a hand on Ellie's shoulder. "You can lose money, son, but don't lose yourself. You can rebuild. You always have." Eli clenched his fists. "But it's not fair, sir. They took everything." "I know," said Mr. Alden gently. "That's why you must stand up. If you quit, you give them power. If you rebuild, you take it back." Those words burned in Ellie's heart. That night, under the flickering candlelight of his small rented room, he wrote in his notebook, "A thief can steal your money, but not your purpose." He decided he would start again, not with anger, but with wisdom. The rebirth, Eli borrowed a small loan from Mr. Alden, just enough to restart. This time, he diversified. Instead of only wood, he began selling candles, matches, and woven baskets made by a widow he met in the town's outskirts. "I'll sell your baskets and give you half," he told her. No tricks. The woman looked at him with tears in her eyes. No one ever offered me that before. Word spread again, but this time for good reasons. Ellie's stall became known as the Honest Corner. Even travelers from nearby villages stopped to buy, trusting the boy with gentle eyes and rough hands, and slowly, very slowly, coins began to stack again. The turning point one rainy afternoon. A tall man in fine clothing stopped by. He looked wealthy, his shoes shone, his coat was velvet. He studied Ellie's setup curiously. "These candles," the man said, "where do you get them?" "I make them myself, sir," Eli replied. The man raised an eyebrow. "You, a child?" "I was poor, sir," said Eli simply, "so I learned everything I could." The man chuckled, impressed. "I own a trading company. We need honest suppliers." "How much can you make in a week?" Ellie's breath caught. "A contract, a real business deal." He straightened. "If you give me a chance, sir, I'll make enough to surprise you." The man smiled faintly. "Then surprise me, boy. Bring me 100 candles by next week." 7 days of fire. Eli worked like never before. Day and night he melted wax, shaped wicks, poured, cooled, and packed. His hands blistered, his eyes burned from sleeplessness, but he stayed by his side, wagging his tail at every candle Eli finished. On the 7th night, he had exactly 100 candles, perfectly shaped, evenly burned, and wrapped in simple cloth. He delivered them the next morning, trembling with exhaustion but glowing with pride. The trader inspected them, lit one, and nodded. "Excellent quality. You've got spirit, boy. How about we make this permanent?" And just like that, Eli became a supplier for one of Brookhaven's busiest merchants. His income tripled within months. He rented a small room for himself and Buddy, bought new clothes, though still simple. And finally, for the first time in his life, he slept without hunger. Yet he never forgot the cold nights beside the windmill. To return a year later, Eli returned to his old village. He walked down the same dusty road, now with strong boots instead of bare feet. The children playing by the windmill stopped and stared. Some recognized him. The old baker's wife cried when she saw him. "Eli, you've grown," she said, touching his coat. "And so well dressed." He smiled shyly. "I remember the smell of your bread when I was starving. It kept me alive, ma'am." He handed her a small pouch of coins. "For the children who can't afford bread." Tears filled her eyes. "Bless you, child." Eli visited Mr. Rowan's farm too, bringing gifts and tools. The old man hugged him tightly. "I told you you had the look of someone who doesn't quit." Ellie's heart swelled with quiet joy. He realized something profound. The richness of giving was greater than any gold he could earn. The meaning of wealth. As he stood near the windmill at sunset, Eli looked at his reflection in the river. The same boy, just older, stronger, wiser. His clothes were new, but his heart was the same. He whispered softly, "I thought wealth was coins and coats, but now I see it's courage, kindness, and never forgetting where you came from." Buddy barked playfully, running in circles as if to agree. Eli laughed, eyes glistening. In that moment, he wasn't just a boy with money, he was a man with purpose. The sound of church bells echoed through the morning fog of Brookhaven. As life moved swiftly in the growing town, merchants shouted their prices. Wheels of carts rumbled over cobblestones, and children laughed on their way to school. Among this rhythm stood Eli, now 17, no longer the frail, hungry orphan of old. His stall had turned into a shop, his name whispered with respect across the district. Ellie's candles and supplies glowed at the corner of the marketplace, its warm light a comfort to travelers and townsfolk alike. He wore clean linen shirts, polished boots, and a calm smile. Beside him, Buddy, his loyal dog, now old and gray, slept peacefully near the counter. Business was thriving. The boy who once sold firewood now had traders working under him, warehouses storing wax and ropes, and contracts with half the city's inns. He had saved every coin, reinvested every profit, and never cheated a soul. But success, Eli had learned, was a delicate flame, one that could burn as easily as it could light. The warning. One crisp autumn morning, Mr. Alden visited Ellie's shop, leaning heavily on his cane. His hair had turned white, but his eyes still held the same spark. "You've done it, boy," he said proudly. "From empty pocket to full storehouse. I'm proud of you." Eli smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you, sir." Mr. Alden looked around thoughtfully. "You've built a good name. Guard it well. But remember, when wealth grows, so do the wolves who watch it." Eli nodded politely, though he didn't fully understand. He thought hard work and kindness would protect him from harm. But the world was wider and colder than he knew. The expansion that winter, Eli was approached by a man named Jonathan Vale, a slick-talking trader with expensive clothes and a sharp grin. "I've heard of your candles," Jonathan said smoothly. "Let's expand your business. I have ships, we can sell them in distant cities. You'll be rich beyond imagination." Eli hesitated. "I'm happy as I am, sir. I only trade what I can manage." Jonathan laughed. "My dear boy, small minds build small empires. Think grand, think of silk, spices, foreign trade." The dream shimmered before Ellie's eyes, ships with his name, wealth enough to feed thousands. He agreed cautiously. They signed a partnership, Jonathan handling transport and sales, Eli providing products and workers. For months, everything seemed perfect. Shipments left the harbor, profits rolled in, and Ellie's shop flourished. His warehouse buzzed with workers, his heart buzzed with pride. He even began dreaming of building a home for orphans, a place for children like him. But then the letters stopped coming. The storm weeks passed. No news from Jonathan. No money. No ships. Eli sent messengers, none returned. Panic gnawed at his chest. He rushed to the port only to find nothing. Jonathan's office was empty, his ships gone, his name erased. Ellie's savings, everything he had built, had been stolen. The betrayal struck like lightning. His workers demanded pay, his debts grew, his warehouse stood full but worthless within weeks. Ellie's business collapsed. The once busy shop was silent. The flickering candlelight that had symbolized hope now trembled weakly against the cold, empty walls. The darkest night. Eli sat on the floor beside Buddy, staring at the ashes of a burnt candle. His mind felt numb, his body weak. "All gone," he whispered. "Everything I worked for, gone." Buddy nudged his hand gently, as if saying not everything. But Ellie's heart was heavy. He felt the same hunger, the same emptiness he had once escaped, not of the stomach, but of the soul. That night he didn't sleep. He walked through the empty streets, the cold wind cutting through his coat. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders of what he'd lost. When he reached the church hill, at dawn, he dropped to his knees in the snow and cried, really cried, for the first time in years. Visit a gentle voice interrupted his sobs. "Eli," it was Mrs. Rowan, the old farmer's widow. Her hands were wrinkled, her eyes kind. "I heard what happened, child." Eli lowered his head. "I failed, ma'am. I trusted the wrong man. I let everyone down." She smiled softly. "You didn't fail, Eli. You just got tested. The fire that burns away your fortune can't touch your heart." Eli frowned. "But I have nothing left." Mrs. Rowan took his hand. "You still have honesty, courage, the will to start again. That's more than gold." She pressed a loaf of bread into his hands. "Fresh, warm, and fragrant. You once shared your last bread with a dog, remember? Now eat, then build again." Eli looked down at the loaf, trembling. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "I'll start again. I'll never stop." The second rise in spring, Eli began anew, not with warehouses, but with hands and heart. He set up a small workshop, taught local orphans to make candles, and shared the profits with them. "We'll build together," he said. No one left behind. At first, sales were small, but people remembered Eli, his name, the honest boy who was betrayed, but didn't he break? Soon townsfolk began supporting him. The mayor himself visited, impressed by his courage. Orders returned. Merchants trusted him again. He named the new business Lighthouse Candles. Its motto was simple: even in darkness, light is made. The return of faith years passed. Ellie's company grew once more, bigger, stronger, fairer. But now, he didn't chase gold. He chased goodness. He built a home for orphans, just as he once dreamed. He taught them trade, honesty, and dignity. Children who once wandered the streets now smiled in warm clothes, holding candles. That bore his name. And every evening, Eli walked through the halls of the orphanage. Remembering his own nights of hunger, he never forgot the boy with torn pockets, because that boy lived inside him still. Fire reborn one night. Years later, Eli lit a candle in his workshop, the same size and shape as the first one he ever sold. But he had passed away peacefully long ago. But Eli still kept the dog's collar hanging above his desk. He whispered, "We did it, old friend. We really did." The flame flickered warmly, dancing on the wax, a small fire that had once symbolized struggle, now shining with peace. Eli smiled softly, whispering the words that define his journey. The flame that burned my fortune taught me to light the world. He stood by the window, watching the village below glow with thousands of his candles, not just lights in houses, but lights of hope. He wasn't just a millionaire by wealth, he was a millionaire in spirit. The millionaire with the same heart the city skyline glittered under a soft drizzle. 1,000 windows gleaming like stars that had chosen to fall and live among men. At the very top of one of those shining towers, building that bore the letters Ward's Industries in silver and blue, stood a man looking out at the world he had built. His name was Eli Ward. He was no longer the ragged boy with torn sleeves and empty pockets. His suit was tailored. His shoes shone like mirrors, and his office smelled faintly of leather and cedar. On the desk lay files of businesses he owned, factories, farms, schools, and homes that he had built for the people of Millwood and beyond. But tonight, as the rain whispered against the glass, Eli wasn't thinking of profit or power. He was thinking of a loaf of burned bread and an old man with tired hands. Scene 1, the echo of the past. Eli closed his eyes and the city disappeared. He remembers his past, very poor and innocent tenor of his life. He could still feel the sting of cold bread in his fingers and the warmth of hope in his chest. He remembered Mr. Howard's cracked voice, "Everything broken teaches you how to build something better." That voice had carried him through years of storms, through every sleepless night fixing machines, by candlelight, through the pain of rejection, through hunger that no longer hurt, but burned like fire inside him, a fire that pushed him to become more. He had turned that fire into fuel, and now the world called him a visionary. But Eli knew the truth. He was still that boy from the dust, carrying a borrowed hammer and a dream that refused to die. Scene 2, the return to Millwood. One autumn morning, decades after he had left, Eli returned to Millwood. The town was older but quieter now. The wooden fences leaned a little more. Bakery was gone, replaced by a grocery store. Children ran along the muddy lanes just like he once had. He walked past the old mill, its wheel long stopped, its roof sagging. The air smelled like wet leaves and memory. At the far corner of the mill yard, he found it, the bench where Mr. Howard used to sit, the one where he had first spoken to Eli. The wood was gray and cracked, the initials MH, carved faintly into the side. Eli sat down, feeling the same wind that once carried his boyhood dreams. He smiled through tears. In his pocket, he carried something, a small silver key. It opened a chest in his tower office filled not with gold or shares, but with mementos. The first tool Mr. Howard gave him, the last coin he earned as a poor boy, and that burned loaf of bread, preserved in resin like a relic of gratitude. He whispered softly, "I made it, Murdoch Howard, but I never left you behind." Scene 3, the School of Hope. That same year, Eli founded the Howard School for Orphans and Builders. Not just a school for learning trades, but a home for children like he once was. He built it on the hill above the river, near where the mill used to stand. The walls were strong, but the rooms were filled with softness, books, beds, laughter, and light. Every morning, he walked through the gates, greeting the children by name. Some carried the same look in their eyes he once had, a mix of hunger and hope. He'd kneel beside them, ruffle their hair, and say, "You don't need to be rich to be great. You just need to keep walking. Even when your shoes are torn." The children adored him, but Eli never let them see the shadows that sometimes followed him. The quiet fear that one day he might forget what it felt like to be hungry, to be small, to be human. So every night, before sleep, he placed his hand over his heart and whispered the same words that carried him through the years. "Stay humble, stay kind, stay real." Scene 4, the night of reflection. One winter evening, snow fell gently across the city, blanketing everything in silence. Eli sat by the window of his country home, watching the flakes drift past the lamplight. He was older now. His hair had silver threads, his face carried gentle lines of time, but his eyes, oh, those eyes still carried that same flame. He opened a letter. It was from one of the children from the school, a girl named Mira, who had just built her first machine from scraps. "Dear Murdoch Ward," she wrote, "you once said everything broken can become something better. I fixed the water pump in our village today." People clapped. I felt what you must have felt when the clock tower struck again. "Thank you for teaching me how to believe." Eli smiled through tears that warmed his old cheeks. Outside, the snow fell thicker. He looked toward the stars and whispered that that's all I ever wanted, for one heart to pass the flame to another. Scene 5. The last dawn years passed. The world grew faster, louder, brighter, but in the heart of Millwood, under the same sun, the Howard School still stood tall. Eli Ward passed away. The bells of Millwood rang for an entire hour. Not in mourning, but in gratitude. The children, now grown, gathered in the courtyard. They carried torches, each one lighting another until the hill glowed golden in the night. Above the school gate, a plaque read, in memory of Eli Ward, who proved that even an empty pocket can carry the richest dream. And somewhere in the wind that brushed across the valley, you could almost hear his voice, calm, smiling, eternal. The richest man is the one who gives what he once prayed for. Remember, every night ends with hope, and every story begins with courage. This is Inspiring Life Stories. Good night, and keep believing. Have a sound sleep.